I was born on the 27th September 1960. When I was 5 years old, I went up to my mum and I said to my mum, "Where were we? What happened?" She said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Mum, we're sitting in a cellar. You're terrified. I'm sitting in your arms. We're both terrified, Mum. We're looking out a window and there's bombs outside." My mum freaked out. That was the worst moment of her life in 1945 in World War II, 15 years before I was born, and she didn't know how to deal with it. She said I was a freak of nature because I told her about a lot about events like this, right, with things that I can remember in my ancestry tools and genetic memory. Some people have genetic memories that go way back thousands of years. They're real, genuine spiritual people who has mental telepathy, ESP, remote viewing, telekinesis, levitation, spoon-bending, clock winding, folding space and time with deja vu to predict the future and prevent what's going to happen. Their aura in their body cells is clockwise, and some of these people can master their mind and use 100% of their brain. The whole world can only use between 3 and 15% of their brain in the highest IQ people in the world. So if they can't master their own vessel with their natural abilities and their natural selection in life, with their natural organic motor skills, they always accuse you of being a freak of nature, or you being stupid, evil, or just discredit you to the maximum because they're trapped in mentality and that's their reality in their personality, and they have amnesia and can't use 85 to 93% of their brain. They can't use their 24th chromosome that gives them superhuman abilities. That's recorded with DNA. Okay, so they discredit you and hate your guts with jealous, spiteful, egotistical, low-life behavior. And that's how the whole world acts, because they can't feel the truth anymore. Their aura's gone. Their body cells going corruption, illusion during the daytime. They all die prematurely from stress-related diseases, and they haven't got any genetic memory with 130 nucleosome molecules with genetic repair kit and 2 molecules mentality to preserve DNA. Yet I do. There's this endormancy, and they have 600 to 6,000 defective genes in every Westerner. As declared worldwide, in America, 77% of all their children today is born with chronic diseases because they are a species in denial, okay, in post-human states and can't think with their biofields and use 27 senses. Every person has 32 senses, but they all live in 5 sense mentality and can only use their 6 sense 1 to 5%. They can't use their 27 biofield senses, biosphere. That gives them mental telepathy, ESP, and all these abilities with dimensional thinking. Like the light bulb idea, the picture that tells you 1,000 words are going to lie to you. The orb of light comes right down next to you and goes in a porthole in a time where time stands still with parallels. So you can go in the past and the future. And no one believes in it. Because they have amnesia, how would they know? They can only use 10% of their brain in over 99% of the population. And their highest IQ can only use 15% with brain deformity, trapped in their mind, in consciousness, which is only a middle process of illusion imagination. But they can't use their spirituality to think instinctively outside the mind, as I said in the Matrix documentary in 1999, because they're a species in denial, declared in 2003. You were told that the whole world's crazy worldwide in 1999 on the 27th of September, worldwide on mainstream media. And your cops and politicians and all your pastors and preachers, all your Christians, all your New Age, and all your whole political field lives in denial. Complete brain lock denial, and live on a screen 8 hours a day with grammar and high IQ, with artificial intelligence and artificial mutation, and they mutate non-stop, as declared by FDA, consistently mutate into the 23rd chromosome. Now everyone's trapped in the 23rd chromosome. And in the Americans and Westerners, the last person that had 24 chromosomes was born back in 1920. You can see it on Google. 1 out of every 10,000. You know, they can't use their 24th chromosome, right? It's in cellular study research. So it's in dormancy. That's why they're mental today and anti-clockwise and can only depend on grammar and talk and word language, right? Because they're conditioned with words, they're conditioned with grammar, And action speaks a lot louder than words. Words don't mean shit. But they all think it's all about words now, like an actor all over the world. And people immediately resonate, and there's no codependent power. They can't even keep their own families and friends together in real life with codependent relationships and soulmates. Westerners don't have soulmates. They don't even know what it is anymore. They're so full of BS and up themselves into their own truth. They live in light power, any vibrations and frequencies because they've got no tune into codependent power. They haven't got a sixth sense. They just lie and have visions and dreams. They can't use mental telepathy, ESP, remote and telekinesis, levitation, spoon bending, clock winding, folding space and time with deja vu. We have masterminds you can levitate a 1-ton stone. You couldn't levitate a thimble, so you don't harness any power. Look at Mastermind Shi Hing, the biggest mastermind in Europe. He harnessed the power. He's gone mainstream now. And if you look at Winhoff, right, standing at university, teaching the top scholars in the world, if you look at YouTube, right, Winhoff at university at Oxford. Oxford, just Google Oxford Winhoff. Trying to teach everyone that you do not know what you do in your mind because you can't think instinctively outside the mind with the sixth sense and above, 7, 8, 9, 10, and all the way through to 32. Christ and only a handful of people knew this. They could master their mind and harness the power, divine power to command nature. So when you go into miracles in hospitals, I have the most divine power in hospital records, bringing someone back to life, given 0% chance of living, with the most powerful poem written in 2003, the one and only, with a massive study done. The most powerful miracle ever recorded in modern history, with CCTV and 7 peer reports, bringing someone back to life, given 0% chance of living. No one believes in it. While they're artificial, they cannot qualify to judge either. They're mental. They haven't got any faith in their own biological genes. So they don't harness that power, and they can't cure and heal anybody. They can't help or love anyone because they don't even know how to love themselves. They just live in a delusional state and live in denial. Total denial. In 1999, in the Star Chamber inquiry by the biggest think tank in the world, I was number 1 most wanted by the Federal Police and the National Crime Authority. What for? Well, 24 stamped an Indian number in such a way the X-ray machine 5 years later couldn't detect it. So I have deja vu to predict the future and prevent what's going to happen. 5 years later, I'm on the front page of the age of 32 as a king vice. Could unravel every single thing you're designed into. I'm on 17 current affairs shows as a mastermind of loopholes to laws and a mastermind manipulation as I could unravel every single thing you're designed into. On reverse psychology engineering. And your body starts going corrosion in the daytime, and you got defective genes because you're deformed, and you lie to yourself with mental disorders going through the roof with stress and anxiety. And stress pandemics and oversaturating the truth and sitting in front of a screen all day on a couch potato, totally disconnected from life, nature, and all the things you're harmony with, because you haven't got any power to command nature at all. 0. Look at your aura. It's anti-clockwise, only working 1 to 5% during the daytime. Mine works 99%, 24 hours a day. Big difference, you know, when you can think clockwise. With deja vu to predict the future, prevent what's going to happen. With remote viewing, it's a big difference, you know. Massive difference. The funniest thing is you're told you're all mentally insane in the world and you lost all your biofields, right? And your lungs and your brains in brain fog. Look at the movie Limitless with the drug that we developed from a plant called Mayo. It proves to you that you can't work your way out of this. We can give you that drug to any human being on earth and open up your progenitor genes in such a way that you come out of your shell, right? And you can see it in the movie Limitless, and then use 100% of your brain with a vortex of information with the universal language, which we describe as the light bulb idea, the picture that tells you 1,000 words that cannot lie to you, because it can't lie to you. Everything else in this world can, in an illusion imagination that you live in, that you program into with a placebo effect that's anti-clockwise in your own body, in your own DNA, living in denial about it. So does your cops and politicians, all your pastors and preachers, and all the top people in the whole world. There's only a handful of us left. Natural people with natural selection in life and a natural order. And we avoid it the most by the rest of the whole world. Because they're jealous, spiteful people and haven't got a care factor. They can't feel the truth and they haven't got a care factor. Go to YouTube. A child is perfect from 0 to 7 clockwise, and can think instinctively outside the mind and mastermind a computer game between 3 and 7 and respond a lot faster than any person with an IQ when they go to school, a lot faster. Look at it like this. When a stranger comes to the door and manipulates your parents in 10 seconds flat, you run to the corner because you can't be manipulated, you can feel the truth. When a good person comes to the door, you and your dog run straight towards that person in a heartbeat with adrenaline before they open their mouth because you can feel the truth. And then your parents freak out and said, oh, the dog's taking you, I don't know why, because they can't feel the truth. So the voice of mind controls them when they go to school to become mentally institutionalized. So they're not like Bruce Lee by 24 that can master his mind, fight 12 people back karate and block every punch 7 times faster than can think, because he's blindfolded and uses his sixth sense and goes into deja vu, right, and prevents what's going to happen and responds 7 times faster than can think in their 5 sense world and their mentality. So if you go to YouTube and put in search engine, third-eye children superhuman, you'll see if we can take them off any Western parents, that by the time they can read, draw and write blindfolded with their sixth sense because they're perfect from 0 to 7. If you bring them up right with spirituality and all their natural process, by the time they're 12, you can see on this video, they can predict the next car coming around the corner of colour it is. They can predict this ring on your phone and what they're wearing on the other end. So they have deja vu to predict the future and prevent what's going to happen, and remote viewing when someone rings on your phone at 12 years old. And you can't do that because you put your kids in school to be mentally institutionalized and then come out like a robot by 18 and think your parents are dinosaurs, right? And then when the boogeyman comes, the monster under the bed, you'll lie to your children and say, it's just a dream, go back to sleep, because you go to school to be mentally institutionalized. So they control you and control your mind, and you can only use 7 to 15% of your brain because you give them consent to control your brain. So you can only use 7 to 15% of your brain because you go to school to be mentally institutionalized, so the boogeyman and the system can control your brain. And then when we come along and use 100% of your brain and go against the old Babylonian beast and prove it to you, what do? Throw stones at us because you're possessed beyond the point of return, and you do it yourself, worldwide, in 98.7% of the population, living in denial. If you cannot master your own mind and use 100% of your brain and harness the God-given power that you got in your own DNA with your ancestral genetic memory, then ask yourself, who's controlling you when you suffer and lie to yourself, living in denial in a massive global delusion state declared worldwide that you live in denial about? You know, to be in my shoes, Mastermind Xi and Winoff, who's won a Nobel Prize with 27 times more powerful immune system and 27 world records for superhuman abilities, you know, we are the biggest masterminds in the world. And you don't care. We were chosen and naturally selected with the most divine intervention and the most divine power ever recorded in modern history, with the most authentic DNA in the world. And I sat down with the top scholars in the whole world. I'm number 1 on every study done for 34 years. When they put direction microphones on me in surveillance, I could feel the truth that they were standing in the courtroom putting pen to paper with my name on it. And they discovered that. I'm an absolute alpha omega, number 1 worldwide in the star category by the biggest think tank in the world, in the biggest study ever done. And then with DNA studies from that day onwards, by 2016, I'm sitting down with the top scholars in the world from the biggest think tank and the biggest scholars in the whole world, and they said, Kim, you're one of a kind on every study done. There's only a handful of you selected like this, and we know who you are with DNA studies. That's why we're watching every human being on Earth to see who's going to wake up from amnesia and the reincarnation trap. And it's only a few, Kim. It's only a handful. We know that. Everyone's trapped in their mind beyond the point of return majority, as declared by Jeremy Givers, the top scholar in the world, the top DNA study, who's watching with NATO and NASA and every person in the world and every DNA. Believe me, they've got an eye on you, on every single human being on Earth, and everyone lives in denial. Well, you'll know if you've been selected with a massive divine intervention. You'll know by the top scholars because they'll come and see you too. We've all had meetings about this. Massive meetings off the grid, behind closed doors. They know the world is nefarious, living in a massive global delusional state in their own truth, manifesting their own truth, and into their own engineering and their own perceptions worldwide. But they haven't got a multiple perception with universal layers. They can't think in parallels with dimensional thinking at all. They've lost all their supernatural power and all their spirituality and only live in grammar in a massive global delusional state, and they make unnatural selections all day. They don't even know the unnatural selection they're making and the barcode system they're in, right, with their intuitive codependent power, because they're not in it. They're living in their mind in a 5 sense world with a high IQ and artificial intelligence, right, and the grammar that they select engineered by AI, artificial human beings on Earth. And there's always been here, you know. There's always been atheist, artificial human beings on Earth that's anti-clockwise that's been running your whole world. What do you expect? What do you expect when you give them consent to control everything you're designed into? What do you expect? You depend on your system and your educational system, right, set up by atheists and anti-clockwise to be mentally institutionalized. What do you expect? What do you expect? What do you expect? From generation to generation, you all do the same thing and allow the government and their systems and their atheists to design you and program you and engineer you from generation to generation, and then you wonder and sit there and think that you're not under mind control. We exposed that in 97. That's why Dealing the Sun got locked up, and I got locked up for 10 years for corruption. Because I didn't want you to know. So I spent 10 years in jail with corruption, and my arresting officer commends me with 40 other cops. And my case is by Chief Justice George in 2010 has been declared the most corrupt case in Australian history, as we brought the cure of the human condition humanity in the biggest study ever done in 2008. And no one cares. Nobody cares, because they're beyond the point of return in denial. They don't want to restore their biological genes and go back to their natural selection life and natural order so they can unlock their progenitor genes and wake up from amnesia and reincarnation trap and use their genetic memory with their genetic ancestry tools coded in their own DNA. They don't want to. They'd rather be mental and trapped in a personality with amnesia and don't want to wake up from amnesia because they're too shit scared. They're controlled by stress, fear and anxiety, confusion, frustration, delusion and paranoia, and lie to themselves about it, go to work, pay the bills, do what they're told. Do exactly what they're told worldwide and just got different inflection points, but they're all talk no action in real life. They're all talk no action. They can't even keep families and friends together in real life. When 220 came over the zombie apocalypse, the first thing that every truther did was conquer, to bang, to buy with their own family members and friends in real life. They're just mouthpieces and actors, right, controlled by the same mechanism with the placebo effect anti-clockwise. And that's what they spread like a virus. When they're living in a 5 sense world on a screen, they're living in their mind on a screen in a 5 sense world. And 5 senses is negative fields. To live outside the mind, to think instinctively, is the most positive fields, with your biofields and in tune to codependent EMP pulse, EMP power. And you're not living in it. You're living in your mind on a screen with actors that want to make a name for themselves with their own opinions. But on actors and screens and texting and text post, you're living in a book smart education. You're living in a 5 sense world. You're not in your 6th sense. You're not in spirituality. You're in mentality all day. 95 to 99% of the time. What do you expect? You live in a 5 sense world inverted. 98.7% in voltage reliability in their DNA, in their aura. It's anti-clockwise. It's inverted. It's not outverted clockwise. Your mind doesn't know what it's doing, nor does anybody else's, because it goes in one ear and out the other, and they scroll on and entertain something else and avoid every single day as the placebo effect, right, starts to send animals round circles over the earth, collapsing fauna and bacteria, which is your immune system worldwide, spreading like a virus, affecting every human being on earth, except for those that think instinctively and think outside the mind, that can master their mind and use 100% of the brain and harness the power, the God-given power that will protect you, your aura, clockwise, and harness the power. That's the only way you're going to go through this. As we go into sixth mass extinction, stripped from the sixth sense for the sixth time. And mental disorders and defects are going through the roof, right, with mental disorders, with psychological mental behavior, and truthers that live on a screen all day, self-proclaimed prophets that's had no divine intervention and no divine power and have never crossed over back in their primordial state, has never gone back in the celestial primordial state and controlled their vessel from the outside in, instead of the inside out, trapped in mentality, in a personality, and live in denial. They have never crossed over. As Plato describes in 15 books, to stick your head for the light in the tunnel, out the cave. You live in the cave in here. We show you that in Limitless and the movie Matrix. When Keanu Reeves, right, his head is through the light in the inner tunnel and he controls the vessel from the outside in. Look at the movie Limitless. He takes a drug, comes out of his vessel and looks back at himself. Then he gets a clarification and uses 100% of his brain and a vortex of information with sevenfold wisdom and knowledge, an outside influence on his reality. When he's not trapped in mentality, then he has a God-given power. It's only a movie, right? Movies are always full of propaganda because Americans, right, only tell their own truth and they're all full of propaganda, declared worldwide. Americans is the worst propaganda artist with all their movies, all their videos, all their books, smart education, and they're all anti-clockwise, living in their mind in a five-sense world, and they're all actors and acting for someone else because they can't master their mind, use 100% of their brain, then they act for someone else, no matter what comes out of their mouth. There's only one way out of this, and it's crossing over. Christ knew. He said you're a walking dead corpse, right, when you're trapped in your personality, right, in the skull. Until you cross over, you don't know what coming alive is all about because you've never been alive in your life. Because that's when your aura goes clockwise and you go from 10% of your brain to 100%. You stick your head out the cave with a vortex of information, right, with divine power, right, where things come out of the blue, like the light bulb out here, that gives you the right information that you can depend on. But you have no faith in it. That's why your placebo effect is anti-clockwise, because you have faith in nothing, only yourself, and even get programmed to believe in he said, she said, the documents of what you mentally resonate with. That's why you control with nothing but, you know what you're controlled by the most? Every one of you out there? What do you think you're controlled by the most? Sentimental value. Proven with DNA studies done. Proven. 98.7% depend on sentimental value, not spirituality with their natural process and the natural selection of life, because they haven't got faith in it. They don't even believe in that. It doesn't matter what they say. The mind doesn't know what it's doing. That's why the top scholars in the world and the top think tanks in the world, from 125 plus IQ is brain deformity, and most of them that are selected in the top levels have got 165 to 200 IQ, and they're the most deformed in DNA studies done. They can't use their biofields, trapped in psychology, in science, anti-clockwise with atheism, and they're trapped beyond the point of return in the 23rd seed, and now the whole world's in the 23rd chromosome, and the 24th in dormancy. You see it in studies out of research. Only a handful of people can master mind, as recorded by NSA and CIA documents I put up, right, with that disclosed in my videos on my timeline many times. I'm sick and tired of repeating myself because even my followers here for 5 years don't fucking listen. They're dumb. Dumb as fuck. They just go back to entertain themselves and don't go through the resurrection and crossover to restore their biofields and their biosystems with their genetic memory. Only a handful in 5 years has done it. Only a tiny handful. So you can all see it yourself. Only a tiny handful of all my followers for 5 years has actually gone through the resurrection. Only a tiny handful dedicated with the book Freedom, right, the Holy Grail of Life, okay, and the Holy Grail of Life, we're not breathing, hailed by 16,000 top scholars in the world, the Holy Grail with natural selection and DNA with genetic memory. DNA is a book of life. DNA is a book of life, and you don't know how to use it. You don't know how to use it because your mind's a problem. You become your own worst enemy. It plays tricks and games on you. You are your own prison, your own warden, you live in your mind. 98.7% of the population lives inside their mind and live in denial worldwide. Declared 2003. Trust me, they all live in denial in their own personalities, with their own mentality and their own opinions, and they haven't got a genuine care factor. They can't feel the truth, and therefore they can't feel someone standing in the courtroom putting pen to paper. They haven't got deja vu. They haven't got nothing. Just all talk, no action. They don't even teach the resurrection, the crossover, or how to restore your biological fields to do what Christ can and more. And I'm the most authentic DNA and the most honest human being on earth that can do every single thing that Christ can and more in the biggest study ever done. I'm one of a kind. One of a kind. And the most rejected person in the world by 99.99% that hasn't got a care factor. Well, God warned you about me. I'll be one of a kind. You won't know who I am. And I come with the resurrection, protect the elect, and you couldn't care less. We know that. We know you're scum. We know you're nothing but godly, small creatures all over earth, like the days of Noah, like the days of Lot. And you can say what you like. Did you go back to your promised state? Did you go through the rebirth? Did you do the crossover? Did you go through resurrection, the salvation plan? Did you? No, you didn't. So you're not in the Christ image. So you won't be saved. You're not in spirituality. You're in mentality, in your own truth, with your own God. But your God didn't give you any power because your God controls you. And you gave your God consent to control you, so you can't master your mind and harness the God-given power, divine power to command nature. And that's where the truth is that 99.9% of you can't fathom, can't face, and can't deal with. So what do you do about it? Nothing. Nothing at all. When you have the last opportunity to cross over and go back into promised state, to live in a timeline of sevenfold wisdom, to be in the Christ image for 1,000 years and never suffer the consequences ever again. Never suffer the consequences. The greatest time to be alive. You have no idea what you're missing. Why would you not want to cross over? Because you do nothing about it. You all think it's going to be handed on your lap with notification and fast food. That's how dumb you are. That's how much you're gone beyond the point of return. We can't even save you, man, because getting through your thick skull, as John says in Revelation, and as Jim McGill says, it's impossible. More than 95% of people has been declared beyond the point of return. And that's not a fucking joke. That's dead set the truth that no one's dealing with and don't care. They think they're chosen with radio waves, and the voice of one that tells them to do that, that's declared ultimate design for human extinction, and they live in denial about it. They do not use their natural process, and they cannot use their natural selection. They cannot harness the power. They cannot mastermind, use 100% of their brain, right? 100% of their brain with God-like power. And you have to be one of us to know this, how mentally insane every single Westerner on screens are with their IQ and what they think they know. Because they're avoiding this the most. The whole world is living into their own mind with their own truth, with their own opinions. And that's a fact of life that you all need to face right now in the time that you're in.